Hello, everyone, and I hope you're doing well. There's a famous anecdote told from the life of Pope John the 23rd. Probably a lot of you have heard it. It goes like this. One day, the Pope was asked by somebody, "Your Holiness, how many people work in the Vatican?" To this, the Pope responded, "About half." This story, I think, resonates with a lot of us because oftentimes we're in situations, whether it's at work, home, or school, where we're with people who we don't quite think pull their weight. For similar reasons, I think today's gospel, taken from Matthew 20, can be a bit unsettling for us. In today's gospel, Jesus tells a parable about an owner of a vineyard who wants to hire workers. And the owner goes out and he hires some workers in the morning who work all day. Others are hired around midday who work half the day. Still others are hired right at the end of the day and only work an hour or so. At the end of the day, the parable gives it its kicker, its kind of surprising turn, when the master of the vineyard pays everybody the same wage. At the end of the day, then, when this happens, there's the person who was hired first in the day who starts complaining to the master of the vineyard, and we can perhaps sympathize with this individual who says, "How is this right? How is this just that I am paid the same as someone who worked only 1 hour? I was working, after all day in the hot sun." This parable is meant to be a bit disturbing. It's meant to provoke us. All parables are supposed to do that. They're supposed to unsettle us so that we can see some deeper spiritual truth. So what is Jesus trying to teach us today? I'd like to suggest that he's teaching us three spiritual truths from this parable. The first is that what we receive from God, God's grace, is something we can never earn. It's an unmerited gift. Grace is the greatest thing we receive from God, the very life of God himself, when we receive this first at baptism. The parable today teaches us that it's something we can't earn. God just gives it to us. And this is important to remember for a couple reasons. First, if we think that we can earn God's grace, like I can earn God's forgiveness by saying enough prayers, by doing enough good works, then sometimes we can be stingy with other people. If we think we've earned God's grace, we can demand that others do the same. We can be hesitant, for example, to accept others, to forgive other people. Also, when we see that God's grace is unearned or unmerited, we begin to see that everything in life is a gift, and this helps us to live with greater joy. The second lesson we learn from the parable is that in God's eyes, we're all equal, we are all beloved, and we all receive the same grace, the same gifts. Oftentimes throughout history, human society, whether it be in politics or even in the church, was shaped in or formed in a kind of triangle, where you had people at the pinnacle of the triangle who hold power, who hold wealth, who hold influence. And then as you go towards the bottom of the triangle, people were seen as less important, having less power, having less significance. What was so radical about Christianity is it took this structure of society that was a triangle and made it into something completely different, made it into an equal society. And we find this quite clearly in the writings of St. Paul. St. Paul did not see the church as a kind of triangle where some people were more important than others. St. Paul saw the church as a body where everybody needed each other, where everybody was important. We see in the gospel today that everybody who goes into the vineyard gets paid the same. In God's eyes, we are all equal, all beloved. We receive the same gifts. No one is more important than anybody else. This is an important lesson because it teaches us that all of us have equal responsibility to work for good, whether it's in the church or in society. We're all equal in God's eyes. We receive the same gifts. Finally, the gospel today is a great challenge for us to be generous as God is generous. We, as I mentioned at the beginning, have people in our life who we feel don't earn or merit things from us, whether it be forgiveness, whether it be our kindness, whether it be our generosity. We're all surrounded by people who we don't feel deserve these things. The parable today challenges us to have the heart of God, to be generous with those people who we don't think deserve it. As we enter this week, can we do this? Can we answer this radical call? Is there somebody in my life who I don't feel deserves my kindness, generosity, or forgiveness? Is there some way that I can be generous with this person just as God is generous with each one of us? God bless you and take care.